right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the grand final of the 2012 IWA English Debate Tournament. Competing on the motion, this House believes the two Koreas should abandon plans to reunify. We have in the government speech jobs, Jung Ju-young, Bae Ji-soo, and Kwak Ju-young. In opposition, we have discussant, Jung Ji-yoon, Kim Min-sol, and Choi Ae-rim. Our distinguished panel of judges today is chaired by Park Hee-won, the former president of the Debate Association of IWA and a semi-finalist in the Australasian Debate Championships. And also includes No Chae-won, Kim Ri-hyun, Kim Hae-young, Hwang Jin-young, Sung Soo-yeon, and Lee Min-jung. Without further ado, I'd like to invite the chair to begin the debate whenever she is ready.
Okay, hello. My name is Hyun Park. I'll be the judge, the chair for the grand finals. The only reason that I'm using microphone is because this is the only way that they can record my voice. I don't like using it, but yeah, I'll just use it for now. First of all, welcome to the 2012 IWA Debate Tournament, and I would like to congratulate both teams to making the grand finals. Okay, thank you. Without any further ado on the motion that this House believes that the two Koreas should abandon plans for reunification, I would like to invite the Prime Minister to open up government's case.
Okay, thank you for everyone and good evening. So, I'm a Prime Minister of government, and we're going to talk about reunification between two Koreas. And before going to original argument, our definition is this house is South Korea, and by reunification, we mean by one country under a single government. So, we strongly don't support reunification of two Koreas. Since the conflict of July 25th, you have been separated in 60 years. 60 years is not short time. Even our government has been changed. Through many governments. It means that even South Korea's government is not stable. So, in the situation, if we unificate with with North Korea, we can make the more confused. So we will never be united with with North Korea, and reunification is out of question. We can overcome all the problems of resources and dangers of nuclear power, such as things, by trade with other nations and international relations. So, furthermore, we are talking about the status quo. So we can only unite it when collapse, which means when they do not have any more standing government. So we came with four arguments, and first one is unification can be dangerous for economical reasons, and second one, it can cause of ideological conflict, and third one is there has a lot of side effects by reunification, and fourth one is it teaches. It can threaten international relations. So I'm going to talk about first two reasons. Firstly, it can be dangerous for economical reasons. If we unify with North Korea, the burden of taxes which I have to pay South Korean will be too much. So right now there will be after unification there will be 20 million more people to have to support in South Korea. So currently, North Korea's GDP was not reached to $1,000. It means that we have to cover all of those peoples and we have to cover that their finances problems. So as a result, for those reasons, our whole economy will become threatened. So maybe the opposite side think that we can offer if governments use the North Korea's nature resources and more, such as peoples, etc. in the future. However, there is no assurance. Our argument is based on the status quo and status quo in history. So we have no safety or assurance, so we cannot reunify it. And also, second reason is that we have very strong ideological conflict. We will have very strong ideological conflict. Comparison to Germany has no conflict wall because no civil war because they didn't have ideological thinking. There has the same ideological thinking. However, even though to
Ma'am?
Korea's yes.
Well, in the Germany case, I believe there was a conflict between the ideology of the communism and the democracy.
No. But I take later the next speakers. And so even though two Koreas become unified, it will be divided into two ideological, which is democracy and communism. So they cannot accept the democracy easily. It means that the South Korea have to be they cannot democracy easily. It means that we have another conflict after the unification. So we think that it also kind of the West and it also kind of the it can be threatened itself by our both countries. So to sum up, our government think that we will not unified with the South Korea because of there is 4 arguments and especially it can be threatened economical problems and also two countries has too strong ideological conflicts, so it can also make some other problems. So finally, as a result, the government do not support the reunification. Thank you.
May I start? Okay. Hello, I'm the first speaker on the opposition side, and before I move on to my arguments and stances, I would like to thank all of you for giving me this wonderful opportunity. Under this motion, this House believes that two Koreas should abandon plans to reunify. Now, I want to ask the government that I want to say that the government failed to mention the motion correctly because they didn't mention it in a specific term because abandon, the word itself, is really extreme. Now, we can always think about reunifying Koreas later on in the long term, but then abandon, I think the word itself is really extreme. And now, and if if they think North Korea and South Korea are two different countries now, why do we think about North Korea and when they are in a crucial help, and why do we think about North Korea when they're in this humanitarian dilemma? So I just want to ask that. Do we really need to separate these two countries forever? Then now that is my question, and I would like to say, I would also like to point. To point that Korea, the two Koreas, were divided not because about the citizens' view. It was divided because of historical events that was a sad part of our history. And if we say no to reunification at all, I believe our house believes that this is neglecting the voices of the citizens, and that is going to be talked about in the deputy leader of opposition. Now, I'm sorry. And I would like to say, at the status quo right now, at least there is, as I mentioned, at least there is a certain plan to reunify. But then they don't ultimately have the plan when. So I want to say that why can't we leave it as it is in the status quo? Why do we have to abandon it? I think the government needs to specify on that. Now we have three arguments as of now. We have three arguments. And first of all, I'm going to talk about the economic development or economic benefits that Korea itself could bring. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I go? Okay, can I go to my rebuttals first? I'm sorry. I forgot about the rebuttals. So they talked about how unification would bring economic harms, but then this is gonna be specifically mentioned in my first stance, so I'm gonna skip this part. But I want to talk about the ideological conflict that they mentioned in their second argument. Now, but then when they talked about ideological conflict, they talked about Germany, and they said, oh, there weren't any ideological conflicts between the two nations. But then I think that's a really, really bad assumption, because the two Germanys had different ideologies. One was communism and one was democratic. That I really want to mention that. And I want to ask another question. Do you think that one ideology has to collapse in order for the two countries to reunify? I think there's what our house has 강조하다 for a very long the whole time, is that we're looking at this as a long term. So if you look at this in the long term wise, we could make conversations with the Council of North Korea and figure things out step by step. Now, moving on to my first argument about economic development. The Prime Minister mentioned that there will be economical harms when it comes to unifications, saying that there will be burden of taxes and North Korea, even though they have natural resources, still there's a lot of burden to South Korea. But I want to mention that there is a lot of economic benefits of North Korea. So let me mention this, that North Korea, the land itself, is connected to China and Russia. Now, if South Korea has the chance to spread its trade through China and Russia, it would make a whole new level of trade that would bring economic benefit. And also, unlike South Korea, North Korea has a lot of planes that is not used by the government nor the country. So if we take this advantage and invest on those planes, then our house believes that the manufacture business in Korea would strive because at the status quo in Korea, the manufacturing business is low compared to other countries. So in our House believes if we enhance this manufacturing business, Korea itself as a country could strive and become a more powerful country. So to wrap up my my argument, first of all, I said that we look at this reunification in the long run. That I want to specify, and we want to say. As the deputy leader of opposition is going to mention, in the symbolic meaning also, we want to look at this. We want to look at this issue in a more specific and more detailed view. So later on, it will help our future generations. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the opposition side and the adjudicators came here. First of all, our government wants to rebut what opposition side talked about. First of all, they talked about helping North Korea and they just mentioned it about helping, and it will lead to reunification or something like that. But however, we believe that there are several conflicts between North Korea and other country and South Korea. If the reason that South Korea actually helped North Korea is that North Korea is having a hard time, of course. However, there are several complex relations between North Korea and China or Russia. If China and Russia are getting help from North Korea, it's because of the relation between South Korea and Russia and China, the relations. Because of that, we help to make and maintain the relation between Russia, Korea, or other country. We also help North Korea to maintain the united relation. Also, they talked about the ideology. German. Of course, yeah, German is a good case. However, we believe that the government German has two different ideologies at the time. However, the thing is that German people, citizens, everyone wanted to be united. However, in this case, in North Korea, we don't know. We are not sure whether they really want to be united with South Korea. We have to figure it out. It will take a long time. So we don't want to take that risk. Also, opposition side talked about the economical benefit and the relation about Russia, China and Russia. Because of that, don't opposition side think that because of the economic benefit, the unification that other opposition side wants to be implicated is not going to. They don't want South Korea or North Korea. Okay, the other country around South Korea and North Korea don't want us to be united. That is why, based on economic benefit, Russia is helping North Korea, and China is also helping North Korea to let them rely on their country and their beneficial economic benefit. Yeah. That is why we are saying reunification shouldn't be implemented. There are two arguments that we are bringing now is that, first of all, there are so many side effects. Second of all, reunification will threaten international relation. First of all, there are several side effects. The reunification will increase higher competition on job place, on working place, because reunification will bring high competition. In Korea, still, in current situation, there are lots of foreign laborers working in 3D jobs or basic labors at a very low cost. Therefore, if South Korea people who are not so educated, and also want to work in that industry, like basic laborers, will have a difficulty to get a job because they also have to compete with foreign laborers and the people from North Korea. for example, let's think about Joseonjuk. Joseonjuk is still in current situation. Joseonjuk come to South Korea to work, and also they take lots of portion in working place. And what about 2,000 of North Korea people come to South Korea and work and suffer to get a job? That will increase our unemployment in Korea. Unemployment will increase, and that economy is totally be conflicted. North Korea, while we are, let's say we unify with North Korea. However, we will be paying for unification tax. We also have to pay for the unemployment defect. So it will also take extra cost to educate. Aside from the laborers who are not very educated, people who are educated in North Korea come to South Korea. It will take extra cost to educate them to work in big companies. Like we have to teach them cultural historical fact, as well as labors. Sorry. And there will be high crimes also. The rate of crimes will be increased because reunification will not satisfy North Koreans' poverty. And so therefore, South Korea will still be a hard place for them, because since South Korea is too strong and too developed, not like North Korea. So North Korea, therefore, there will be tons of North Koreans who are suffering, who will do the crime and make the crime. And think about the army, soldiers from North Korea. They are not educated, and they will come to North Korea. And if they don't get a job, then they will do the crimes. So how are you going to explain about the opposition? And we're also thinking about it will threaten international relation. North Korea is watched by other countries, because the country which has a good relation with South Korea will not agree with South Korea, trying to unify with North Korea, because North Korea has a big power on military. China has a good relation with North Korea. America has a good relation with South Korea. It's going to be technically worse between other nations also. So fights will be arise, and so that therefore we don't want to reunify. We don't want to take risks to ruin our relation with other countries, and will lead to several problems and isolation in other countries in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First, I would like to begin by making our stance. Our stance is that we should not abandon plans to unify, but we should at least try and do this in a long term. And first, I would like to make a rebuttal of what the government side have stated. First, they talked about the side effects that could arise from the reunification, and rebuttal about the the unemployment part. I believe this is inevitable. However, as the population grows and as North Koreans reunite with the South Koreans, the population would rise automatically, and this would automatically lead to higher birth rate. And as there are higher birth rates, the population would automatically grow, and this would lead to demand of larger workforce. And about the argument about the threatening the international relation, I believe that the government side is ignoring the assumption that a lot of times North Korea is the source of international conflict. Internationally, North Korea is considered as a rogue nation, which means it is causing lots of conflict in international fields. And they are also considered as a sore in an eye internationally by doing things such as dropping out of NPT and stuff. And they also want lots of aids. And if North Korea gets reunited with the South Korea, I believe that these kinds of problems could be solved. And moving on to my argument, my first argument is that the government side is not considering the citizens' point of view. This country is definitely not run by the government. This is our country, and it is run by the citizens, since we are living in a democratic country. And therefore, citizens' opinions definitely matter. And you government side are not considering the case of separated families. There are lots of separated families, more than we expect, and a lot of them are they are ailing because they cannot meet their family members who are in other countries, and we should not ignore this just because of material gains and losses. And my second point is that the reunification has a meaningful symbolic significance, because in the sense that we are attempting to reunify two conflicting countries. As I mentioned earlier, North Korea is a rock state, and with the ideology of communism. And if we successfully achieve the reunification by certain attempts, we could prove that we South Koreans have the capability to fight over the conflicts, and we could actually increase our influence in the international fields. And this could be viewed as an ultimate success of globalization. Also, we could give hopes to lots of countries that are in conflict with other countries. And I believe that for these reasons, we should at least try to reunify those two Koreas, but we should not definitely abandon the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, both speakers and the honorable judges. This is our last debate, so I will try to make my point to the point and be a good whip. Okay, so before moving on to the rebuttals, I would like to introduce what our government side have said previously. So we strongly abandon, we do not want reunification of two Koreas because of these following ideas that by reunification, there will be economic disaster and a lot of tax burdens on people. And secondly, because people in Korea, we do not share the same ideological, and there's a lot of ideological difference between people. And thirdly, there will be a lot of side effects due to that will put a lot of burden on the economy, such as a high employment and high competition to get a job. Same thing. And then fourthly, the reunification will cause a lot of international relation problem, and which we cannot risk. Moving on to the rebuttals, the opposition, they have provided that we are still giving a lot of necessities and aid to North Korea. So why can't we just reunite if we're doing that? However, we bring up this opposing argument from the government. We only provide those necessities and aid because we have to. Because North Korea, they are dangerous. They are dangerous in the sense that they have nuclear power, and this is our agreement that the United Nations and the whole world agrees. Whole world is giving aid to Korea, whether or not we reunite or not. It is a must thing to do in order to secure the global security. And also, secondly, they brought up an example of Germany. Well, Germany is a good example of reunification of people and two nations that has been separated. They also share a similar characteristic in the sense that they were democracy and communism in both people. However, Germany, they did not have a civil war. They did not go through a people killing, brother killing fight. And Korea, we had those fights because people themselves believed that they had a different ideology. And therefore, in a sense, when we do reunite, will those North Korean people who are educated under Kim Jong-il's horrendous regime, which does not make sense to most of us, will those people agree to abide by the South Korean
Ma'am.
government? I'll take that later. Actually, yes.
Oh, okay, so you are neglecting the fact that we are taking a long-term approach, and we can always educate them before we actually unite them, and we can implement the democratic aspects to their brain
Yes.
before.
However, in reality, North Korea itself is completely closed down. It's not in our globalized society. North Korea is out of the case. They are not communicating with the global people, and there is no way for us to actually go across the border and communicate with these people, and try to teach them democracy. That will ruin the whole point of why the Kim Jong-il is doing a dictatorship. As moving on, we talked about China and Russia. That was an important aspect the opposition brought up, as in the sense that it will bring an economic benefit if we do reunite, because we will have more variety and opportunity to improve our manufacturing business. However, we already have a sound business with China and Russia, and in reality, China and Russia, they do not want us to reunite, because if we do, then we will have much power over our manufacturing business, and we will not trade with China or Russia. And in that sense, their price of woods or whatever we're importing will become lower. So in that sense, China and Russia, they don't want us to reunite, and this logical point that is brought up by opposition is weak and in a sense not reasonable. And also, we are proposing the abandonment of reunification because, as the government side has brought up, that there are many more benefits to not being reunited with South Korea. And also there are other alternatives that we can do without being reunited. Are there any POIs? Actually, never mind. So moving on to summarizing our our government did a very good job in pointing out very good arguments and essential, important arguments why we do not need a reunification. Because tax burdens, people of Korea, South Korea, these days, we are overwhelmed, overpressured by our dying economy. We don't earn much, and people are getting out of going unemployed every single day. We don't need more taxes put on the people. As we have brought up, in an economical sense, it's an economic disaster to have a reunification. People will be burdened with so much more taxes, such as reunification taxes. It will put more pressure and burdens on the citizen, and citizens nowadays are already complaining of where our taxes are going. And also, we pointed out that there will be an international relation risk to put on when we consider the idea of reunification, because nobody really, in a global sense, no other country wants us to be reunited, because it will threaten their own economy and the global power. If we do reunite, what ranking are we? Are we like 13 in the OECD or something? I mean, we will go up, and other countries don't really want that. So in reality, in practical sense, reunification is a risk that Korea is taking. Because our country depends a lot on the export. So we must keep a good relation with other countries in order to survive in this dying economic world. We have a Great Depression that is far worse than the 1930s. So thereby, the government side, we strongly resist the idea of reunification with the North Korea, no matter how much we love them. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, in today's debate under the motion that this House believes the two Koreas should abandon plans to reunify, we are opposition side are very shameful that the government side are not engaging to us in whatsoever in the long-term aspect. We are saying that we have to at least consider the reunification as the ultimate goal as a Korean society. We see the two countries, the South Korea and North Korea, as a one single nation under the same ethnicity and under the same language. Just because they went under to civil wars, just because they were fighting, because that is not a justification for the government side to say and come up here and say that we don't care about them. We don't care about them becoming to one of us. We actually, opposition side, take into that consideration because even if that civil war was happening, we take that into more consideration because the civil war was not just happening between the South Korea and North Korea. They were actually the international strength conflict between the China's communism and also the America's democratic values as well. So if we see that in the point of those kind of views, you can actually see the civil war was not the consent of the citizens of Korean people. So when you think about that, and when you just, in the line of those thoughts, when you just neglect the possibilities of unification of Korea, you are neglecting the consent of the citizens of Korean, and as well as a South Korean citizen and as well as a North Korean citizen. So with that line, we don't think that is aligned with the democratic society of Korea. And yes?
You have pointed out that the civil war did not happen because, think about right now the status quo. The South Korean people, we do not actually want it because of the heavy economical disaster that will bring, and also the North Korean citizen will not want it because they have been educated with wrong ideological senses. So. The civil war happened like 60 years ago, so right now those descendants will not think the same.
Yes. Well, that economic harm, and it is actually explained through our opposition team's case that it is detrimental to certain in the current status quo, but we are saying that in the long term, and also even if that detrimenting aspects are taken into consideration, we prioritize the citizens' consent because it is a democratic society and Korea is a democratic society, and we want to implement that democratic value to the North Korea as well. So in that line of thinking, we actually think that this at least attempt and at least efforts to reunify is a very important thing. So with that, I would like to fastly go on to my rebuttals and clashes. Before I move on to my clashes, I would like to rebut to some previous points that made by the opposition, the government whip. So firstly, they thought about the ideological fact. It is in line with the Civil War explanation that I mentioned before. So it's a shameful fact that they don't take into a great consideration about the aspect of trying. They are so pessimistic about that. Then why are you taking those aids to North Korea at all? Then how are you actually going to make the North Korea a better place for them? How are you going to implement the democratic ideas to them or that values? How are you going to make that? And under their case is not explained at all. So I don't think that their argument at all stands. And also for the rebuttals about the international threat of becoming the Korea as an international threat to the America and also the UN or whatever. As a Korea society, do we actually have to consider about the America's point of view or their realist view? We are a Korean society and we are the Korean government. We have to take our own stance and we have to consider our own point of view to make a Korean society a more powerful country in order for us to develop. So in that line of thinking, it was shameful fact that they didn't really take that into consideration. So I would like to move on to my clashes. First clash, I would like to talk about why should we actually abandon the plan itself, and actually for the second clash, I would like to talk about the procedures of unification, and also the third clash, I would like to talk about is unification beneficial or harmful to us, as in Korea and international and a citizen term. So first, as a first clash, why should we abandon it? The government side has come up here and said definitely no to it. There is needless efforts to take into unification, but that is actually wrong, and it is actually explained to our team's previous speakers, because firstly, it is very extreme to not only take into any efforts towards the unification, and also there is always possibilities to take another approach, and they are neglecting those kind of aspects to it. And also, there is an importance of holding the idea of unification because firstly, Korea is a one country. As I explained before, South Korea and North Korea has the same ethnicity and it holds the same history longer than it holds that a different history of North Korea and South Korea, the divided situation. The whole one single country is a more devastating and more longer history, and it has a sense that we are one. And also, as I said before, there was no consent within the citizen about the division of Korea. So with that, I don't think that they are actually considering the separated family or other countries' consent, other citizens' consent. So with that line, why we think the opposition team think that definitely there's no need to abandon the plan itself. And also, for the second clash about the procedures of unification, the government side has kept up here and saying that unification itself is an attack, is a fight, and is a collapse. The one country has to collapse in order to be unified. But there is always a possibility for talks and councils and meetings. So even if that situation comes to attack and a fighting and a collapsing situation, even if those situations are happening, is most likely unlikely to happen, but the citizens, because they don't have any voices, they don't have any opportunities to say up here and say anything about unification, it is a very bad thing for them, and it has a justification in there. So moving on to my third clash is about, is unification beneficial to us as a Korean and internationally and even the citizens? The government side came up here and says only about the economic harms, that education and employment, and there will be harmful aspects if we unify right now, but they didn't really engage in the long-term aspects, so their kind of cases false. And even if those kind of cases, the economic harmful aspects are taken into consideration, we think that as a Korean government, as a citizen, that the North Korean citizen falls along with the South Korean citizen and a government of this Korea, we have to have the obligation to take into certain amount of those kind of harmful aspects, and we have to make an effort to decrease those harmful aspects as well. And even though they had brought up the ideological conflict, but as I explained before, there has to be the efforts to decrease the harms and these differences. And also the opposition side has come up here and says the beneficial aspects about economically, they are beneficial at the end of the day when they unify because of the manufacturing senses. As the Russia and Korea, Russia and China, it will be helpful for them to trade more. And also there is a democratic approach. As I said before and constantly, there can be citizens' voice can be taken into consideration, and also the symbolic meanings of the unification itself. Because why should we, as a South Korean country as itself, it implements the idea that the South Korea has the capability to be unified with the North Korea rather than with the aiding of the other countries. So for those reasons, we're very proud to oppose.
Hi, I'm the last speaker of the opposition side. I would like to say that, again, I'm honored, but then, now, the reason, okay, overall, this was an average debate in my opinion. But sad to say, I mean, the government side failed to engage in with us, and then they totally misunderstood the motion first. So they didn't mention the word abandoning, and they didn't think about the part abandoning, how it's crucial. I mean, not crucial, brutal to the point that to say. By abandoning reunification at all I think is too brutal to the point too brutal because of the painful history that the two Koreas have gone through over like more than 50 years. Now think about the separated families. Let's look at it in their point of view. How would you feel then? How would you feel if reunification was abandoned forever? I think that would be really devastating, as if I was one of those separated families. Now, and I want to say it is shame for the government side to say North Korea is evil and they're the axis of evil. I think that's a mere assumption, because just because the ruling few are evil doesn't mean the whole citizens of North Korea are evil. And let's give an example. It's saying like North Korea or South Korea are mother and father, and then they had a fight. Just because they had a fight doesn't mean that, oh, I have to kill you because you have different ideologies than I. So from that sense, I believe that it was shame for them to label North Korea evil and evil. And I want to say that they had a huge mistake when it came to Germany that said at first they had same ideologies, but then they were wrong. And then after that, they said, oh, wait, Germany had different ideologies, and they said, oh wait, Germany had different ideologies, but then Korea didn't, like, unlike Korea who had bloody fight with each other, that Germany didn't have fight each other, but fight with each other. Then can you name the bloody war that the two Koreas have gone through? I don't think there is a bloody war between the two countries, after they have been bloody wars. And they said there would be a harm in the international relationship. But do you think the status quo, just by leaving it and taking a long-term step in the long term, brings a harm to the status quo, harms to the society? I don't think so. Just because we leave it as is, it doesn't mean that we're harming the international relationship. So I want to question in the end why the government thinks the status quo is wrong in the end. So before I end my speech, I would like to say that as I mentioned earlier, we have to think about the citizens' point of view, and also just think about the economic benefits that it could bring, not in the short term of view, but then in the long term of view. This is what for these reasons, I think the opposition side won. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opposite side's effort. But however, we still believe that the arguments they are bringing up are totally nonsense. And let's talk about the family. We're not government side. We're not saying that we're going to abandon family. We are still trying everything to support the family, reunion, gathering, by providing reunion, gathering, and so on. Also, we are trying everything to support North Korea. We'll help. We give them rice and everything. Also, considering all the facts such as international relation, something like that. Because since we are living in the era which is very important, which international relationship is really important. So they are bringing up totally outdated story. Also, they mention about opposition side mentioned about a government neglect their try. Also neglect the what was that? Try or whatever. Yeah, as a government, we don't want to take a risk, and we don't want to get our citizen in South Korea in trouble. That's our duty to protect our citizen. We are not considering a long term. We consider short term to protect our citizens first. So that's why we brought up several arguments to support our idea. First of all, South Korea, if we unify with North Korea, the burden of taxes will take the burden of birth will be very high and very severe. So right now, there will be 20 million more people to support. North Korea's GDP do not reach $1,000. It means that we have to really help them. We have to cover North Korea and the people. That will harm our economy in South Korea also. So second, ideological conflicts. Ideological conflicts is hard to recover if it really tends to unification. There still be because there still be duality system. If it's not, it is not what government wants to have duality system. Since war generates and strengthen the ideology or the duality system, there will be another conflict if duality system will be generated after unification. Thirdly, we talked about side effect. There will be high competition on the job place or working place, since there are a lot of foreign laborers in South Korea working in 3D basic labors. Also, it will cost a lot of money, extra cost to educate North Korea people who are educated to work in a big company or something like that. Lastly, we strongly believe that reunification will threaten international relationship, since the countries which has a good relation with other country, our country don't want to ruin the international relation to harm our citizen and harm the edification of Korea. We don't want to ruin the relationship. We don't want to take a risk to make this society, this country, in complex. Therefore, we believe that reunification has severe problems. So we are not going to unify with North Korea. Thank you.
Are you ready? 준비 다 하셨어요? Okay, so that concludes the final debate, and we have only one thing remaining, which is to award the championship to one of these two fine teams. Let's applaud both of them for an excellent debate. And now I'll invite the president of the jury, Park Hee-won, to come up and give the announcement of the winner.
Just give out the results. Okay. That's very high.
You can make a couple comments if you want.
Nah, that's fine. It feels very strange to be up here again. It feels like a debater. But today my job is to give you out the result. But before that, thank you both teams for making it like to grand finals and also for the debate. We had 7 judges, including me. We had a unanimous decision. The champion of 2012 Ewha debate tournament. Congratulations, opposition discussant.